Welcome to Her Voice, a podcast hosted by her campus at UC Berkeley. I'm Lali, and I am one of your hosts today. I'm joined by my fellow co-host, Natalie, and we're excited to bring you the second episode of Her Voice. On this show, we'll be discussing issues important to college women and the Berkeley campus. Over the course of this season of the podcast, we'll have roundtable conversations and bring in a variety of guests to talk about topics from self-care to female empowerment, professional development to relationships, and much, much more. In the midst of a global crisis with a pandemic raging, we hope Her Voice offers a space for anyone looking for a refreshing and unique look into the lives of college women today.
And with that, I'd like to introduce Samhita, who will be joining us today to discuss a very important topic, self-care. Let's get started.
Thanks so much. This is such an important topic for so many reasons. First of all, we are in a global pandemic. It's a crisis that I don't think any of us really foresaw, but now we are trapped, isolated in our homes and socially distanced from pretty much all of our friends and spending most of our days in essentially one or two or however many rooms can be a lot to take on. And a lot of people are struggling with mental health issues and really figuring out how to navigate the new normal, I guess. And honestly, it's been more than a full year since the beginning of this pandemic, and it is just something that we're all still grappling with, but at this point, it's become very much the normal. So yeah, I just wanted to ask you all, what is self-care? What is self-care to you? How do you practice self-care? What does it mean for you to engage in healthy mental and physical activities?
I guess I would say self-care is any sort of activity, whether it be like a mental activity or a physical activity, that puts you in a place where you feel at ease mentally, and it's a reprieve from daily life, and it's just a way to overall balance out any anxieties that you face. So I think it's super, super important to practice it. I guess putting it plainly, if you're going 24/7 and you don't have time to breathe and really just focus on what you enjoy doing, I think it would get very hard. And of course, there's so many other factors that play into that. And I don't think I'm personally qualified to kind of get too deep into that. But I think there are certain aspects of self-care that can potentially make life a little bit less hectic, a little bit less stressful, whether it be exercise, painting, watching Netflix, cooking good food. Any of that, I think, is what I would designate as self-care. So yeah, Lali, what about you?
I agree with Natalie. I feel like self-care is just something that brings you back down to earth for those days where you're very overwhelmed. Even if it's just literally standing in your kitchen and making yourself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but just kind of letting go, forgetting that there is stress and that there is school and that you have a job to take care of. Kind of just, being one with yourself and learning how to relax. Because I feel like nowadays stress is everybody's normal. And that's not how it should be. We should all learn how to relax and just sit back and be okay with sitting back and not having anything to do, even if it's just to watch some mind-numbing show that has no point or lesson to be learned from it. Rest is so important, and I feel like we take it for granted a lot of times.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when we're home, there isn't as much separation between our work lives and our personal lives and whatever else we're doing. You have to very consciously, intentionally go about practicing self-care, practicing things that really make you feel better, not because it's work for someone else or because someone else asks you to do it or someone else tells you that you're doing a good job. It's very much just for yourself, making you feel better. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I would say chocolate is a very tangible form of self-care for me. Maybe I'm indulging a bit too much. We call it self-care and that's how we do it. But yeah, to be honest, a lot of people are really engaging with food a lot more in the pandemic, being more intentional. And you remember at the start of the pandemic, everyone was baking bread, and cooking has become such a therapeutic form of self-care for so many people. And I can completely see that. There's a recipe you follow, or there's just a very standardized way you might cut ingredients, and then your mind can go to different places. I often watch a YouTube video of someone cooking, or just some self-indulgent show or something like that while I'm cooking, and I just that really helps me feel a little bit more grounded in like, this is me time. Like I'm cooking food that makes me happy, that will fuel me up, and also like doing an activity that just makes me feel like I'm more connected to the people around me, even if it is just watching a show by myself. And while we're isolated, I think that that really helps. So how do you make self-care a priority? Sometimes you feel like there's so many responsibilities and there's just so much going on in the world. And sometimes it's hard to take a step back and be like, oh, I don't feel like doing anything today, or I feel guilty for not completing this task. Like it's hard to make yourself a priority. And I'd love to hear from you guys. How do you make self-care a priority?
I think one way is to find ways to structure your day, possibly, and make sure that you pencil in time for yourself. It can be hard, especially if, one task runs over longer than you expected, something pops up, because days can sometimes be unexpected and you might not be able to find time. I think just like having a core belief with you that you won't be able to perform your best and do your best work unless you are mentally, emotionally, physically fulfilled. Productivity is not exactly the end goal, but just feeling balanced includes making self-care a priority and making sure you have time for yourself, whatever activity it may be, however long it may take. Having that daily is probably best. That's just like my view, but it can vary, from person to person. So yeah. What about you, Lali?
I definitely have to agree with the structuring. I feel like, sometimes it might not work out, which is totally fine. But I feel like oftentimes we can kind of just get lost in like trying to get everything done. We forget to give ourselves even the 30-minute TikTok break that you get while you're eating. And I feel like it's very important. It doesn't even have to be something huge. Oh my God, I'm going to take half the day and like do a face mask, a massage, or like take a bath. Like it could literally be just making yourself your favorite food or spending those 30 minutes on TikTok. Like just a time where you kind of just let your mind be loose. Enjoy the stuff that isn't so academic or so structured. Be creative or just distract yourself. And I feel like that's very important. It takes a lot from a person to be able to strip themselves of that notion where spending time like that is a waste of time, and actually realizing that those 30 minutes might actually be beneficial to you, because the next day you might just wake up a little more refreshed and less stressed, and your mind isn't going to be running 100 miles per hour worrying about what you should have been doing. Like it's okay to let go. And I feel like that's what a lot of people need to realize, that like it's okay if you're not stressed, and it's okay if you don't have anything to do. You don't have to be doing something all the time. Like you could literally be sitting there and that's perfectly fine.
The art of doing nothing. Oh, what a luxury. I love it though. I completely agree with what you both said. So when you're practicing self-care or any of these things we've mentioned, how do you make it feel, or how do you keep that idea that this is self-care? Like instead of 30 minutes on TikTok, say you spent 4 hours on it. Am I guilty of this? Yes. But like how do you get around that mindset? Like, okay, 30 minutes, that was okay. But now that I've spent more than 30 minutes on it, I've spent a couple hours, I feel like I've wasted my time and I'm definitely more behind than I was before. Like, how do you get around that mindset? Or would you say that is self-care, or do you need to be more intentional about how you're spending that time?
That's a really good question. I'm still trying to figure that out as well, because I definitely get into that mindset where I feel guilty for going too much into relaxation mode, and then just trying to scramble back into the work productivity mode and trying to overcompensate for that. So I really don't know the answer to this, and I wish that I did. But I feel like it's definitely relatable. A lot of people face that issue as well. What do you think, Lali?
Yeah, I'm also very guilty of that. Like, I will honestly just look at my homework and then get distracted and go on TikTok and call it self-care. But I feel like oftentimes too, I do have to tell myself, okay, yeah, you wasted more than your allotted time of self-care. But that also doesn't mean I need to do that same amount of homework. Like, say that it's 10 p.m. I spent 2 hours, so now it's midnight. I am not going to make up those 2 hours and go to sleep at 3 a.m. Done that, been there, not the move. So I feel like I just tell myself, you know what, hey, we wasted time. Let's just do what we can, get some night's rest, and then start again tomorrow. I feel like it's also kind of toxic to feel bad about it. Yeah, it's probably not good to get yourself in trouble for it, because you're really not going to get anything out of it. If you're constantly telling yourself, hey, you did bad doing that, you're just going to feel horrible in general about taking time for yourself. So I feel like oftentimes it's also just kind of reflecting that you went over it and maybe just being proactive about it and being like, oh, you still have the time to do it tomorrow.
Yes, I completely agree with you. Like, not being too hard on yourself for going wrong or not beating yourself up about something. Like, having that change of mindset that, okay, this isn't what we anticipated, this isn't what we were going for, but that's okay. And like being nice to yourself, that is self-care. Sometimes I find that watching a show or scrolling through Instagram, especially for people who do social media, for example, like we're all on social media and, we're scrolling, but when you do that as part of your job, I guess, which I'm incredibly thankful for our social media team, they managed to make incredible graphics and having amazing photos and post on social media all the time. It really put me into the mindset of like, okay, this is something that some people can do for a job. And when, that came about, what was it, like 10 years ago, that people were making YouTube videos, they're becoming content creators. Like they turn that hobby into a job. And I feel like we have to be more intentional going forward, that like the self-care that we practice isn't for other people's enjoyment. It's not for other people's entertainment. It's for our own personal well-being, for our own personal growth and that kind of thing. So on that line of thought, what are some ways that you actually practice self-care, like some tangible ways or some examples for mental, emotional, and physical ways that you practice self-care?
I kind of want to go off of that like social media point. I think just making sure that what you're doing is what's best for you. Like I'm thinking in terms of like exercise, you may like really not want to do anything, but 30 minutes later you could feel really good. But I guess just in general, like what's best for you mentally, emotionally, physically, and not kind of worrying about what other people are doing. And I guess what I do, I try to stay off of social media because I feel like there's a difference between doing things that are very like mentally engaging and stimulating and then just like scrolling on Instagram or checking Snapchat or something. I feel like TikTok is a little bit different because you can actually like laugh at things like that and it's like funny and you get like, fulfillment and enjoyment from that.
I also feel like I learn a lot from TikTok. Like I feel like I'm educated.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. You learn a lot on TikTok. And it's just like the most like niche areas of knowledge too, but it's really fascinating. But other than that, I think I try to exercise a lot just because I feel like that's the only thing right now keeping me kind of mentally stable and not fully, but it's helping a lot with like focus and concentration.
Not fully stable, just like a little bit.
Yeah, just enough,
I love that. It's great balance you have there. I mean, a little bit of instability is, of course, it's just necessary to keep life interesting.
Exactly, right? Seriously, though. But yeah, it helps with balancing things. And I still face stress and anxiety in like day to day just because of everything and Zoom fatigue as well, because that's unavoidable right now. But it just gives me a little bit of an extra boost, especially when I do it in the morning. For shorter term benefits, I kind of just do like watching Netflix, Hulu, all of that good stuff, and then like baking and cooking because that's super fun. But what about you, Lali?
For me, a lot of my self-care is like honestly just disconnecting. It is a very bad habit that like when I do disconnect, it's like completely, I won't answer text, I won't answer social media, anything. But like it feels really nice to, because I feel like a lot of our connections, at least now that we're online for the most part, everything is virtual. Like if you want to see what's going on in someone's life, it's like you're looking at Insta stories, you're looking at Snapchat stories, whatever, even Twitter fleets. So I feel like a lot of it can get overwhelming because sometimes to a certain degree you are comparing lifestyles and you're like, oh wow, they're doing that, I'm not doing anything. So I feel like for me, cutting that off, even if it's for a day, it feels so nice. Like it's a weight that's been lifted. And you don't realize how much social media takes like precedence over your life until you do activities like those where you're just like, yeah, you know what? Let me just not keep up with you guys for the next 2 days, which is really nice. And I just spend it a lot with my family. Like for me, self-care is just sitting on the couch with my mom. And even if it's laughing at some like stupid Will Ferrell movie, like, that for me is already different. Like it makes up for, having to stress over an exam or having to just like stress over like, homework I haven't done. So yeah, a lot of it for me is just spending time with like, people close to me, avoiding other online people, but spending time with my family, just talking to them and like being able to experience their life through conversations. It makes my life feel a little bit easier and just different. Also going on hikes or just walking, like, I don't know, I'm the kind of person that can just walk and just seeing nature and seeing how beautiful it is. I realize how small I am amongst the entire universe. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's not that big of a deal that I'm worrying about it. Like maybe I can just chillax for a couple seconds and like the world is still going to keep spinning. So yeah, that's how I have self-care. Very existential, but very effective.
I don't disconnect as much. I guess I will just intentionally not look at things. And I'm pretty sure my friends know when I'm disconnecting because I'm online. I'm just not saying anything. But I think that's really interesting, like going away for a few days and then coming back and realizing that, you know, it's not necessary for us to be online all the time. And I feel like a lot of people are having that realization, like this thing that we engage in almost all the time that we're like encouraged to engage in because, you know, it's profitable. And it makes us feel like we are being productive when we're online, even when we are just mindlessly scrolling sometimes. So yeah, it's pretty hard. I would say I have a few people that I will stay in contact with no matter what. Like my partner, I will always be texting at some point in the day because it's like grounding influence, I guess. Having those people who care about what you do and who you are outside of social media and outside of like, all of the things that make up all the other parts of your life, just when that's all stripped away at the end of the day, like you don't want to do anything else, like who do you want to contact? That's the good vibes. I was wondering, Lali, especially when you take a step back from social media, like is that something more recent, or were you always that good about self-care like that?
It's definitely been something more recent because I used to be the kind of person that felt like I needed to be on social media so people knew that I was there. But like after we started online university, just like the world just shut down. I started to kind of like analyze like how much I was using social media and to what extent it was beneficial to me. Because I did realize that like initially when I got sent back home and I started to see people still going out, like we're talking March, initial COVID situation, and people were still going out. It's like, damn, that could be me. You know, like I should be doing that. I should be exploring. I should be going out. And then I noticed that that had a very negative impact on my attitude towards everything that I was doing. I started to slowly just take initiative of at least once a week, just kind of not go on social media or just like shut it down completely and like erase it. And one of my friends got me to that because she deletes her apps. Like start the semester, she deletes Instagram, she deletes Snapchat, she deletes Twitter, like the entire app. And like I see her and she's more grounded. Obviously on a smaller scale, I just like, you know, go off of it a little bit, like intentionally see the app just keep sliding on my phone, or I'll just go on shopping apps instead just to have something to swipe on. But yeah, it's definitely, it helps. It makes me focus more on me rather than what other people are doing. And like, it makes me realize that I'm going at my own pace. And like, if someone is literally getting that bag, good for them. I'm trying to get my own. Yeah.
I love that. I think that's like so important just to kind of take a step back. And I also think it does help you get a little bit more grounded too. I admire that. I wish I could do that more. But I just think it's very important because we spend so much of our lives online, staring at a computer, staring at a screen. It's good to just like step away from that and see like what effects it has on your life, even if you try just once. Like I tried doing that last semester for an assignment that I had in one of the classes. It was a 36-hour or so like disconnect. And I ended up listening to a lot of music on my record player and just doing a lot of reading. And that was a weird weekend, but it felt really nice. It was refreshing, you know?
I have done that assignment and it's hard. And it's surprising how hard it is because it's so tempting. All it is like the click of a button and you're back online. But yeah, it was a challenging assignment, but it was a fantastic time. It was really great to feel like I was connecting on a human level and like feeling so much more present, I guess. I think I've definitely gotten out of the habit of when I was in high school, feeling like I had to post a lot, feeling like I had to keep up a schedule or something like that. I've definitely gotten out of that, but even more than that, like letting people know or watching other people's stories, especially on Instagram or something like that, where people are posting about their daily lives and really wondering, questioning, is this something I should be doing? Is this something that I should enjoy? Whenever I do post, it becomes more of a stressful situation than self-care. So I feel like part of it is just being aware of what helps and what doesn't help. I think that's the biggest thing. If you really love posting about every moment of your life and that brings you joy and that is what builds you up, then that's something that maybe that is going to be a form of self-care for you. But it is just knowing like what aspect is helpful for your mental health and for your emotional health. Like that is so much more important than what others are perceiving.
This really brought to mind the idea that a lot of the younger generations, which kind of grew up with social media, I feel like it's interesting to hear how we still have that ability to be like, oh, we grew up without technology and we're eased into it. And now we have that sensation where it's like, wow, what do I do without it? But there's these kids that don't know anything but social media. They literally grew up with parents who were already on Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat. So now for them, that's the normal. So like, you can't really say like, oh, for them self-care is disconnecting because they don't know what it means to not be connected. I feel like that's where social media really becomes toxic, where it's like if they were disconnected, what would they do? Like how would they react? So for them maybe self-care is just being on social media, which is really interesting. And like
we are just on the cusp of being part of that generation and being part of the kids who had social media from pretty much day one. And it's really interesting to me because I don't know if you guys have read it or seen CEOs of big tech companies talking about it, but all those people say that they don't let their children have technology or don't let their children use Facebook or Instagram or that kind of thing.
That reminds me of The Social Dilemma. Have you guys seen that? Yeah, the documentary. I think some of the people who spoke said like specifically that like they don't let their kids or they limit their kids' time on their phones or social media, which is really interesting. And it makes you wonder, like, should we be doing that too? Like, what do they know that we don't? I have a year-old sister who, this is actually maybe to speak on like the benefits of it possibly, because she uses social media to connect with other people. She found like internet friends who live in different states through social media. So I think there are definitely some merits. They are maybe more intuitive or maybe more open to making connections online. And I think that could lend itself to like their own way of self-care and their own way of finding that like emotional, mental fulfillment.
Yeah, I completely agree.
yeah,
Really useful for like keeping in touch with people, especially people who aren't, like your next door neighbors, the people you go to school with. Like it's almost giving you access to people who are different from you.
I remember reading an article where like someone said that basically their argument was that they didn't want their kids to have that addiction, and the use of the word addiction was pretty interesting because like they just don't want to take part in that situation because as much as there are benefits, like they know the negative connotations of.
Absolutely. It's created for us to be addicted to these platforms and for us to go to the how many likes do we have and want to see that number go up. Thankfully, we're talking about self-care here and how to avoid feeling overwhelmed by all this negative energy, I guess. So have you guys seen any differences in yourself since you started very actively practicing self-care and being aware and being more intentional about it?
Yeah, it's definitely just been a lot of like me self-reflecting. I guess in a way getting to know myself because I feel like we just focus on like validation from other sources rather than self-validation, which I guess comes hand in hand with self. It's good to give yourself props. Even if it's awkward, like stand in the mirror and be like, you know what, we did good. Like it was a hard week, but we did good. Even if it's something small, like I just feel so much better. Like I can literally just sit there. Like last night, I binged Twilight, and you think about it, and you're like, probably not the best use of my time, but like it made me feel good again because I was like, you know what? Like it reminded me of when I was smaller, and I just felt younger. I felt refreshed. I felt great. So yeah, I feel like we need to treat ourselves sometimes, and not expect other people to do it for us. Just kind of do it for yourself and make yourself feel great. Like
Definitely would agree with that. It's super important to give yourself gratitude or credit, like no matter how big or small the task is that you've done. I like what you said, you did good this week, whatever it may be, because if you're constantly like working towards a goal and you don't feel any sort of gratification, or like, you don't feel like you're doing well or that you're like proud of yourself in any way, then it might be hard to continue to do those things long term. So it's good to just stop and think like how far you've gotten, no matter how big or small the task you were able to do that day was. Just like, reflect and be like, you know what, I did something, it was good, and I'm proud of myself. In terms of like the effects that it has had, probably just being more mindful and focusing more on the moment, like exercising has helped a lot with that. And it also has helped a lot with no matter like how big or small the tasks of the day are, and no matter how much I like have to do that day, it's helped a lot with like kind of taking it one thing at a time. Because when you look at your schedule, like on Google Calendar or something, and you just see all the things you have to do, and you're just like, ugh. But like I feel like in a way exercising has helped me like go to that class and focus in on that class, and then know that I have like a 30-minute break so I can relax for those 30 minutes before going into the next thing. I think that has helped me be a little bit less stressed. I've also been like watching a lot of YouTube recently, and I don't know if you guys have kept up with, this is kind of a tangent, but like the 2018 Winter Olympics at all, or if you're like familiar with it. No, not really. So. Well, I remember like watching those, watching it like not live, but just like whenever it aired on the TV, 2-3 years ago, and just like watching the figure skating programs and being like so relaxed. And isn't it so fun to watch? It's like
beautiful. Like sometimes I will personally like look up just to relax. I will look up on YouTube just like figure skating to a song. Like I don't know if you've seen Burn from like the Hamilton soundtrack, and then the person who does like ice skates to that, and I've watched that so many times. I've showed my mom. Like it's so good. And then there's one where someone did it to one of King George's songs, and it's hilarious. It's a great form of self-care. I will second you on that.
It's very majestic. Like the piano ballads that they do it to, and like the twirl. Oh my god! Like it's ASMR to just hear the skates on the ice and the little like ice pieces just relaxing. Like I could literally sit there and watch the little turns every day. It's amazing.
It's just like so satisfying. But yeah, that's also a form of self-care.
Being more mindful and being more aware has been so helpful for so many people. And it's just a conversation that's been brought to light, and people are more willing to have that conversation. And I feel like in generations past, maybe there have been similar issues, or people have faced like anxiety, and they've had to like kind of go about navigating that alone. And I think making this type of topic more approachable and just having normal conversations about it, and saying that, everyday things are self-care. You don't need to go out and go to a spa, get a massage. Anything that you enjoy that helps you wind down or feel good, whatever it is, that can be something that self-care for you. And I definitely think that once you start practicing those, as I guess all of us have, there's a tangible difference. If I'm annoyed or if I'm sad and I just don't know why, this is something that's very regular. I will tell like my partner, I'll be like, give me 3 business days to figure it out, and then I'll tell you why. Because in the moment, sometimes you just don't know. So that is our very normal part of our relationship now. And the reality is like, sometimes they're just things that you feel, and you need to like touch base with yourself, and like practicing self-care, giving yourself time, giving yourself grace, like that is the way to do it. So yeah, I think with that, we're going to close out this conversation about self-care and self-love. Thank you so much, Lali and Natalie, for taking the time to talk about this and have me on as well for this conversation about self-care and self-love.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Samhita and Lali. This was a super great conversation. I feel like we all learned a little bit more about self-care, and I hope anybody who is listening along learned some things as well. So Thank you for tuning in to the second episode of Her Voice. We're so excited to bring you more episodes in the future, and we're looking forward to where this journey will take us.
Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to be alerted whenever we post our episodes every other week. In the meantime, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.